Emotional neglect does not disappear with age. It changes shape. It follows you into every close relationship, especially romantic ones. At first, everything feels normal. You date, you connect, you talk. But underneath the surface, old wiring is running. And it shows up in subtle ways. An emotionally neglected adult often struggles with emotional intimacy, not physical closeness. Emotional closeness. There is a difference. They can sit next to someone, sleep next to someone, spend years with someone, and still feel unseen. Or worse, they struggle to let themselves be seen. Here's what most people don't realize. When vulnerability was never safe in childhood, it feels dangerous in adulthood. Even with someone kind, even with someone patient. When a partner asks, "What's wrong?" the answer is often, "Nothing." Not because nothing is wrong, but because identifying it feels overwhelming, and expressing it feels risky. So they withdraw, or they intellectualize. They explain feelings instead of feeling them. They analyze the relationship instead of experiencing it. Control feels safer than exposure. This is where distance begins. Not loud distance, quiet distance. They may avoid conflict, because conflict feels like emotional chaos. Or they may overreact to small issues, because their nervous system is already sensitive. Small disagreements can trigger old patterns. Silence feels like rejection. Tone shifts feel like danger. Delayed texts feel personal. But instead of saying, "I feel insecure right now," they shut down, or they become critical, or they detach. This is the part no one talks about. Emotionally neglected adults often confuse independence with emotional isolation. They tell themselves, "I don't need anyone." But what they really mean is, "I learned not to expect anyone." There is a difference. One is strength. The other is protection. And protection can block connection. In American dating culture, this pattern blends in easily. People praise independence. They admire self-sufficiency. They call it confidence. But deep relationships require interdependence. They require emotional risk. They require saying things like, "I need reassurance," or "That hurt me." If those words were never modeled growing up, they feel unnatural, sometimes even weak. So the relationship becomes unbalanced. They become the stable one, the calm one, the logical one. But internally, needs go unmet. And unmet needs turn into resentment. Resentment that feels confusing, because they never clearly asked for anything. Here's where things change. Eventually, one of two things happens. Either they choose emotionally unavailable partners over and over, or they meet someone emotionally available. And that feels uncomfortable, because healthy attention can feel unfamiliar, sometimes even suspicious. Kindness feels intense. Consistency feels strange. And they may pull away, not because they do not care, but because closeness activates old fears. Fear of being ignored, fear of being too much, fear of being disappointed. So they protect themselves first. Distance before depth, control before vulnerability. But underneath all of it is something simple. A child who learned that emotions are handled alone. That child grew up, but the rule stayed. And here is the psychological truth. The moment someone recognizes this pattern, the rule begins to weaken. Awareness interrupts conditioning. Not instantly, but gradually. Because once you see the pattern, you cannot fully unsee it. You begin noticing when you shut down. You begin noticing when you minimize your own feelings. You begin noticing when independence is actually avoidance. And that awareness creates choice. Not dramatic change. Not instant transformation. Choice. The choice to pause instead of withdraw. The choice to name instead of suppress. The choice to risk small vulnerability. Emotional neglect may have shaped the nervous system, but it does not have to control the future. Because what was learned in silence can be relearned in awareness. And here's the question most people avoid. If you were never emotionally seen as a child, are you still hiding now? Write your answer in the comments. Not for validation, but for recognition. Emotional neglect does not just affect feelings, it shapes identity. A child builds identity through reflection, not mirrors on walls. Mirrors in people. When a parent notices a child's excitement and responds with warmth, the child learns, my joy matters. When a parent acknowledges frustration and helps process it, the child learns, my anger has meaning. Identity forms through these repeated reflections. But when emotions are ignored, minimized, or redirected, something different forms. The child stops looking outward for validation. They start building identity around adaptation, around performance, around usefulness. This is where things quietly shift. The emotionally neglected child often becomes the easy child, the mature one, the independent one, the one who does not cause problems. Teachers like them, relatives praise them. They hear things like, you're so strong for your age. You don't need much. You're low maintenance. It sounds positive, but here's what most people don't realize. Those labels can become cages. Because the child internalizes a rule. My value comes from not needing anything. And that rule follows them into adulthood. In high school, they might be the friend everyone vents to, but they rarely open up. In college, they might handle stress quietly. No drama. No breakdowns. Just pressure stored internally. At work, they become reliable, responsible, self-sufficient. Managers trust them. Coworkers depend on them. But inside, there is often a quiet exhaustion. Because their identity is built around giving, not receiving. Here's the part no one talks about. When a child grows up without emotional validation, they often struggle to trust their own emotional experience. They second-guess themselves. Am I overreacting? Is this even a big deal? Maybe I'm just too sensitive. That internal doubt becomes constant background noise. It affects dating. They tolerate emotional distance because it feels familiar. They confuse intensity with connection. Or they choose partners who are emotionally unavailable. Because emotionally unavailable feels normal. It feels like home. This is not weakness. It is conditioning. Identity becomes organized around safety strategies. Stay calm. Stay helpful. Stay quiet. Do not make waves. The problem is, over time, this identity disconnects them from authentic desire. What do I want? What do I feel? What do I need? Those questions feel foreign, sometimes even selfish, because they were never encouraged. This is where emotional neglect becomes invisible but powerful. The adult may look stable, functional, successful, but internally there can be a hollow space, a sense of being unknown, even to themselves. Portion 1, the invisible absence. Most emotionally neglected children do not know they were neglected. That's what makes it dangerous. They grew up believing nothing was wrong. Because nothing dramatic happened. No screaming, no violence, no chaos. just something missing. And the brain does not ignore what is missing. It adapts to it. A child sits at the dinner table. The parents are there. The food is warm. The television is on. Everything looks fine. But the child feels something missing. Not love, not shelter, not structure. Something harder to describe. Emotional neglect is not about what was done. It is about what was not done. The child felt afraid. No one noticed. The child felt overwhelmed. No one asked why. The child tried to explain something important. The response was distracted, or rushed, or minimized. You're overreacting. It's not a big deal. You're too sensitive. No one meant harm. That is what makes it confusing. Because emotional neglect often happens in families that believe they are doing their best. Bills are paid. School events are attended. Birthdays are celebrated. But emotions are not explored. Feelings are not named. And discomfort is quickly shut down. So the child begins to adapt. Because children always adapt. They watch carefully. They learn which emotions get attention and which emotions get ignored. Excitement might be welcomed. Achievement might be praised. But sadness, anger, fear, those make adults uncomfortable. So the child makes a quiet decision. Keep those inside. Not consciously. Not dramatically. Just gradually. They become easier, quieter,